Can you learn a language in 3 months? Yes, you can learn a language in 3 months. You can't sound like a native speaker in 3 months, obviously. I'm not going to overpromise on that, but you can learn enough to be able to understand the language and to be able to speak about any subject. If you do this, if you do the usual thing, study grammar, go to classes, go to school, blah, 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 you'll take years and years and years and you still won't be able to speak well. If you use apps and gamified websites and that stuff, which is basically entertainment disguised as learning, you will never be fluent. If you want to be fluent, this is what you need to do. This is the natural language learning system. Learning a language is simple. You have to learn vocabulary, you have to learn how the grammar works, and you have to learn how the language sounds. And once you know enough of all those three, you'll be able to understand the language. To be able to speak it, you need to know all that, and then you need a lot of speaking practice. And I'm going to show you the most effective way of getting good at all those things quickly. Yeah? First, vocabulary. You need to learn lots and lots of words. Start with the most common 1,000 words. 80-20 rule. If you know the most common words, the 500 to 1,000 most common words, you will understand a lot of the language. Doesn't mean you'll understand everything, but you'll understand a lot, especially when you're reading. So, what you should do is memorize vocabulary with associations. You visualize the vocabulary, you visualize the meaning of the words, you visualize something that sounds like those words. It's a pretty simple exercise once you learn how to do it, and you can easily memorize over 100 words a day with this. If you just do this and don't do anything else, you'll forget all the words eventually. But if you do this and then you get massive input, this means reading and listening massive amounts of the language daily, all those words that you memorize, the common ones, will help you understand what you're reading and what you're listening to. Reading will always be easier than listening, but you'll get good at both if you do enough of it. And if you've memorized the most common words, it'll be pretty easy from the beginning. You just have to keep doing it until you understand 80%, the 90, 95, 99%. Eventually, you'll understand everything. Yeah, memorize vocabulary, read and listen to the language. That's it. You don't need to study grammar. You don't need to do any of that stuff. You learn grammar by reading and listening to the language and by using the language. Yeah, and that's comprehension. If you just do that, you'll be able to understand the language eventually. The more vocab you memorize daily, and the more time you spend reading and listening, the faster your comprehension will improve. It's as simple as that. Then speaking. If you skip this part, you'll never be very good at speaking, because in order to speak, you need to know the words you're going to use, right? If you don't know the words, you won't be able to speak. But there's a cheat code for this, which is language islands. This is a technique that is very simple. It's simply a list of situations, interactions, sentences, situations, interactions, and conversations. And then for each one of them, you prepare a list of sentences. You translate everything into the language that you're trying to learn, and you practice saying them over and over and over again. Say the sentences aloud. Um, and with these language islands, you'll be able to do well in most conversations. You will not sound well, your pronunciation will be pretty bad, but we'll fix that with listen and repeating drills. Any kind of audio is good for this. You listen to sentences and you repeat after. You try to sound as close as possible to uh, the native speakers that you're listening to. You can do this using YouTube or anything, any kind of audio. And this, if you pay attention to detail, your pronunciation will get better. Again, doing a lot of listening will also help your pronunciation. Your speaking will improve, because if you're absorbing a lot of the language, you're acquiring it, you will start thinking in complete sentences instead of words. You start imitating the natural sound of the language, and the hundreds or even thousands of sentences that you prepared and memorized for all the conversations you will have. You'll be able to say those things with good pronunciation if you do enough listening and enough listening and repeating exercises. Shadowing is basically the same thing, but without listening, pausing, and repeating. Just do it simultaneously, as if you were singing a song that you're listening to. It's more difficult, but it's pretty good to acquire the natural pace of the language. And with this, you'll be able to speak and understand the language. And the last thing would be to get rid of mistakes. And for this, you should do a lot of writing. This comes last because first we want to be able to say things, then we want to sound close enough to native speakers so that they understand us. And the last thing should be to try to speak with the least amount of mistakes possible. And for that, these two exercises are really good. Scriptorium is basically writing in the language. You copy a text in the language, any text. You could write your own text uh, in your language and then use a translator and copy it. And you say every word aloud while you're copying it. I like using a pen and paper. You can do it uh, on your laptop as well. You simply copy the sentences while you say them aloud. And this, typing and repeating aloud grammatically correct sentences will help you eventually learn all the grammar without having to study the rules, without having to do any grammar exercises, any of that crap. Last thing, translation. Same thing, but here we'll translate from the language into your language and then back without looking, and you compare um, your translation with the original and you correct all your mistakes. You compare, let's say you learn in Spanish. You take a Spanish text, you translate it into English, translate it back into Spanish, and you compare it with the original Spanish and you correct all your mistakes. And there'll be plenty of them the first time, there'll be much fewer the second time, and so on. If you keep doing this, eventually you'll make no mistakes. The other option would be not translating it into your language first. So you could take any text and you paste it on Google Translate or DeepL. So you've got a bilingual text, you've got the language you're trying to learn and your language, and you translate directly from the language you're trying to learn, and then you compare with the original and correct without having to write it twice. This is the most time efficient way of doing it. And if you do all of this, again, summarizing, memorize lots of vocabulary using associations. I've got several tutorials on how to do this fast, learn hundreds of words a week quickly. Start with the most common ones so your comprehension improves quickly. Lots and lots of reading and listening to improve comprehension until you understand everything. At the same time, language islands, lists of useful sentences that you write and translate into the language and then memorize for every possible scenario. Listening and repeating drills for pronunciation and fluency, and writing in the language with modern technology. And this is all you need to do. If you do all of this daily, you will improve very, very quickly, and you can learn any language to a good level in a few months. Yeah, and this is all. So you should stop wasting time. Don't wait until 2024, New Year resolutions, blah blah. Start now. Start reading and listening and memorizing vocab now. Create your language islands now, and by January you'll be able to understand a little bit. Your speaking will already be. You'll be able to say some stuff, and your language learning journey will be halfway already if you start now, right? So if you like this video, you found it useful, give it a like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. If you want me to coach you personally, get in touch, join my workshops if you want to do it in a group. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you next time.